Ethan parked his car on the quiet street he once knew so well. The houses looked the same, lined with tall maple trees that swayed in the late afternoon wind. He hadn't been back in years, not since moving to the city for work. And the neighborhood carried the kind of silence that made old memories come alive. He was here for one reason only, to stop by his best friend's home. Mr. and Mrs. Parker had always treated him like family. And though he had drifted away with time, he felt the pull to visit again. When he walked up the familiar path to the front porch, the sound of the wooden steps under his feet brought back echoes of childhood summer's days spent running across lawns. Laughter filling the air. Evenings of shared meals that tasted of home. He knocked on the door, expecting the warmth of his friend's parents, or maybe even a quick hello from his old buddy if he happened to be home. Instead, the door opened to Claire. For a moment, Ethan froze. He remembered her as the little sister who used to follow them around, always trying to keep up, always full of questions. But the young woman standing in front of him was not that child anymore. Claire was 21 now, grown, confident, and nothing like the girl he had left behind years ago. She wore a simple sweater, her hair tied loosely. But there was something in her presence that felt different, more striking than he expected. Her eyes widened with surprise, then lit up with recognition. "Ethan," she asked, her voice carrying both disbelief and delight. He smiled, though caught off guard. "Yeah, it's me. Long time, huh?" She laughed softly and stepped aside to let him in. "It's been years. You look different. Older? I mean," Ethan chuckled, brushing the dust of time off the moment. "Well, that happens." Inside, the house was quiet. The family photos still lined the walls, but the air felt still, almost too still. Claire explained quickly that her parents had gone away for a short trip, and her brother Ethan's best friend was away at college, busy with his own life. She was the only one at home. Ethan nodded, taking a seat in the living room, the couch familiar yet strangely foreign now. It was odd to sit there without the laughter of the family echoing around. Claire joined him, carrying 2 glasses of iced tea, and for a while he talked casually about his job in the city, about her classes, about the way the neighborhood had changed. She spoke with an ease that surprised him. She wasn't the shy girl he remembered. She had grown into her own voice, steady and warm. As she spoke, Ethan found himself studying her without meaning to, the way she carried herself, the way her eyes held on to his words. He tried to push away the thought, reminding himself this was Claire, the sister of his best friend. But it was impossible not to notice the difference time had made. The evening sunlight filtered through the curtains, painting the room in soft gold. It felt like a moment out of place, like time had slowed just for them. Ethan sipped his drink, listening to Claire laugh about a story from her college life. But beneath it all, he felt something stirring, something he hadn't expected when he drove into the old neighborhood. There was a pause, quiet but heavy, as if both of them sensed it too, the unspoken shift that made the air feel almost fragile. Claire looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read, a mix of curiosity and something deeper. Ethan shifted in his seat, suddenly aware of how alone they were in the house, how different this visit already felt. He had come expecting a simple reunion, a quick hello to the family that had always been kind to him. But as the moments stretched, Ethan realized this was not going to be just another visit. Something was unfolding, slow but certain, and it carried a weight he couldn't ignore. What he didn't know was that before the evening ended, Claire would ask him something he never imagined she would say. And that single question would change the way he looked at her forever. The evening stretched quietly. The kind of silence that didn't feel empty but full, like something weighted beneath the surface. Ethan leaned back on the couch, his glass of iced tea almost finished, while Claire sat across from him, tucking her legs under herself, looking comfortable in a way that surprised him. She had grown into a woman who spoke with confidence, who carried herself with a calm that made it easy to listen. The little sister he remembered was gone. They talked about simple things at first, her classes, his work in the city, how the neighborhood had changed. But slowly, their words moved to deeper ground. Claire asked him about choices, about regrets, about whether he ever felt like life was moving too fast. Ethan found himself answering honestly more than he thought he would. There was something about her listening, the way her eyes stayed locked on his. That made him feel like his words mattered. The room dimmed as the sun dipped lower, the golden light turning into soft evening shadows. A small lamp lit the space, casting a warm glow between them. Ethan felt the quiet press in, and in that pause, Claire shifted slightly, her expression more serious than before. "Ethan," she said, her voice softer, carrying a weight that caught his attention. "Can I ask you something?" He straightened, curious. "Of course. What's on your mind?" She hesitated, her fingers tightening around her glass. Her eyes flickered, unsure for a second, then settled on him with a steadiness that surprised him. "Promise me you'll answer honestly." Her words carried something more than casual curiosity. Ethan nodded slowly. "I promise." Claire took a small breath, and for a moment it looked like she might change her mind. But then, almost in a whisper, she said, "Did you ever see me differently? Not just as your friend's little sister, but as me." The words hung in the air like a stone dropped into water, rippling through everything Ethan thought he knew about this evening. He froze, caught completely off guard. His mind scrambled for a response, but his heart beat louder than his thoughts. He looked at her, trying to read her face. She wasn't smiling, she wasn't joking. There was no teasing in her tone. It was raw, vulnerable, and utterly sincere. She had waited for this moment, maybe carried the question for years. And now it was laid bare in front of him. Ethan swallowed hard, feeling a sudden rush of memories. The time she had tagged along, the shy girl trailing behind them, the laughter in the backyard. He remembered how he had barely noticed her then, too caught up in his own life. But he also remembered the last time he had seen her before leaving for the city. How quickly she had been changing, how she had started to step into her own. He had noticed. He had pushed the thought away, but it had been there unspoken now. Faced with her question, he realized how dangerous the truth felt. If he admitted it, everything between them could change. Her brother, his best friend, the family who trusted Hamid could all be complicated beyond repair. But if he denied it, he would be erasing her courage. Dismissing the bravery it took for her to ask, Claire watched him carefully, her eyes searching his face. I need to know," she said quietly. "Because sometimes I felt like you did. But then I told myself I was imagining it." Her words pierced deeper than he expected. She wasn't asking for flattery, and she wasn't playing a game. She wanted the truth, his truth. Ethan leaned forward, his hands clasped together as he tried to find the right words. The silence felt heavy, but he couldn't rush. This was not a question to answer lightly. For a moment, he thought of avoiding it, laughing it off, changing the subject. But something in her eyes stopped him. She deserved honesty, even if the truth was complicated. "Claire," he began, his voice lower than before, "you've grown into someone remarkable. And yes, I did notice. I tried not to, because you were my best friend's sister, because of your family. But I would be lying if I said I never saw you differently." Her breath caught, and for a second her face softened, almost in relief. But there was sadness too, like she had expected the truth to be heavy. "I thought so," she whispered. "I just needed to hear it from you." Ethan sat back, his heart racing. He didn't know what would happen next, only that this moment had changed everything. Claire had asked the question he never thought she would, and in answering it, he had crossed a line he could never uncross. The room felt different now, charged, fragile, and alive with emotions neither of them fully understood. And though nothing had happened, Ethan knew this was the beginning of something he could no longer ignore. The moment after Ethan spoke felt endless. The words were autonomous, unpolished, and heavier than anything he had admitted in years. He had told Claire the truth, a truth he had buried and avoided, but now it was alive between them. The air in the living room grew thick, as if even the walls knew something important had just shifted. Claire didn't move right away. She sat very still, her eyes locked on his. Her lips parted slightly as though she wanted to respond but couldn't. Then, slowly, she let out a shaky breath and leaned back against the couch cushion. "I knew it," she whispered. almost to herself. I could feel it, but I thought maybe I was just making it up. Her voice cracked, and for the first time that evening, Ethan saw how vulnerable she was. She had carried this question for years, hidden behind casual smiles and polite greetings. Now, with his answer, the weight of all those years came rushing forward. Ethan's chest tightened. He wanted to say more, to explain, to comfort her, but the truth was complicated. How could he tell her that, yes, he had noticed her, but had pushed it down out of loyalty to her family? How could he say that he had thought about it and stopped himself 100 times? Every word that came to mind felt dangerous. "Claire," he said gently, "I never wanted to make things complicated. You're important to me, and so is your family. That's why I tried not to." His voice faded. He couldn't finish. The sentence itself felt like it might break something fragile. She looked down at her hands, her fingers twisting together nervously. "So, you fought it?" she asked quietly. "You pushed it away?" Ethan nodded, his throat tight. "I had to." Her eyes lifted to his again, and they glistened with unshed tears. "Do you know what that felt like for me? To always be in the room, always be around you, and wonder if you ever saw me." Ethan felt his heart ache at her words. He remembered the younger Claire lingering at the edge of conversations, watching them with wide eyes. Never quite part of their circle, but always nearby. He had never thought about how it must have felt for Herb, being invisible, being dismissed as just the little sister. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I didn't mean to make you feel that way." Her smile was faint, bittersweet. "I'm not angry. I needed to know. I needed to hear that I wasn't crazy for feeling something all those years." Ethan wanted to reach across the small space between them, to hold her hand, to take away the sadness in her eyes. But he didn't. He couldn't. The line between them was clear, even if it hurt to honor it. He knew if he touched her now, it would change everything beyond repair. The silence stretched again, not cold, but full of emotions neither of them could put into words. Claire leaned back, her shoulders sinking, as if the weight of the confession had exhausted her. Ethan sat forward, his hands clasped, staring at the floor, wishing he could go back in time and handle things differently. Finally, Claire spoke again, her voice steadier. "I don't want this to ruin anything. I just wanted to know if what I felt was real." She paused, searching his face. "And now I do." Ethan lifted his eyes to hers, and in that moment, he saw both strength and sadness. She was young, but her courage was remarkable. She had dared to ask what most people would have kept buried forever. And now, even though the truth carried weight, she faced it with grace. "Claire," he said quietly, "you deserve to be seen. Not just by me, but by someone who can give you everything you're looking for. I wish I could." He stopped again, his voice breaking with the words he couldn't say. She gave a small, sad smile. "I know. And maybe one day I'll find someone who does. But tonight, I needed it to be you." Her words struck him deeply. Tonight, in this quiet house, while her parents were away and her brother was far from home. She had chosen to bare her heart. She hadn't asked for promises. She hadn't demanded anything more. All she wanted was recognition, a truth she could carry with her even if it hurt. Ethan leaned back, his chest heavy. He realized then that sometimes the hardest truths weren't the ones we spoke, but the ones we carried silently for years. And now, with her question answered, there was no going back. The clock on the wall ticked softly, the only sound in the room. Time felt slower, every second stretching into something fragile. Claire wiped at her eyes, then straightened her shoulders. She looked at him with a mix of gratitude and sadness. "Thank you," she said softly. "For being honest?" Ethan nodded, but the heaviness in his chest didn't ease. He knew this moment would linger in his memory for a long time. He had admitted something he never thought he'd say aloud. And though nothing more had happened, it felt like everything had changed. For the rest of the evening, their conversation drifted back to safer topics. The city, the future. But the question and its answer hung unspoken between every word, like a secret neither of them could forget. They smiled, they laughed softly, but beneath it all was the weight of what had been said. When Ethan finally stood to leave, the night had fully settled outside, the air cool and still. Claire walked him to the door, her expression calm but her eyes carrying the truth of the evening. She didn't ask for more, and he didn't offer. They both knew that stepping further would risk everything, and yet both knew the truth had already changed them. As he stepped out into the quiet street, Ethan felt the cool air on his face and drew in a long breath. He told himself he had done the right thing. He had been honest without crossing a line. But as he walked toward his car, his heart told him another story, one that would follow him long after this night was gone. And in the stillness of that evening, Ethan realized that sometimes the truth is not about what happens next, but about finally admitting what was always there, a truth too heavy to carry, and yet too important to keep hidden forever. The night had grown quiet, and the soft hum of the clock on the wall was the only sound left in the living room. Ethan sat there, his mind full of words he wanted to say but couldn't. Across from him, Claire leaned back against the couch, her expression calm on the surface, but her eyes gave her away. They carried a storm of emotions, relief, sadness, courage, and something more he couldn't name. Ethan knew it was time to go. The truth had been spoken, and staying any longer felt dangerous. He didn't want to give her false hope, and he didn't trust himself not to say more than he should. He pushed himself up slowly, the weight of the evening heavy on his chest. Claire stood too, her movements quiet, almost hesitant. She walked him toward the door, her steps soft against the wooden floor. Neither of them spoke right away. The silence between them wasn't awkward anymore. It was thick with everything they had said and everything they couldn't. At the door, Ethan paused, turning to face her. He searched her face, trying to memorize the way she looked in this moment, her hair falling loosely. The faint curve of a sad smile, the strength hidden beneath her vulnerability. He wanted to tell her she deserved the world, that she would one day find someone who saw her fully, who could love her without hesitation. But the words stuck in his throat. Claire broke the silence first. "Thank you," she whispered. Her voice was steady, though her eyes shimmered. "For being honest. That's all I needed tonight." Ethan swallowed hard. "I wish I could have said it differently. I never wanted to hurt you." She shook her head gently. "You didn't hurt me. You gave me the truth. Sometimes that's harder than anything else, but it's what I wanted." For a second, Ethan almost reached for her hand. The urge was strong to give her some small sign that she wasn't alone, that her courage meant something. But he stopped himself. Touching her now would cross a line he had promised himself he wouldn't. Instead, he nodded, the sadness in his chest heavier than before. Claire opened the door and the cool night air rushed in. The street was quiet, the kind of silence that made even the smallest sound echo. Ethan stepped outside, but before walking away, he turned back one last time. She was still standing there, framed in the doorway, her eyes holding his. "I'll always be proud of you, Claire," he said softly, "for asking what you asked, for being brave enough to want the truth." Her lips curved into a small, trembling smile. "And I'll always remember this night," she replied. For a long second, they just stood there, the world around them still. Then Ethan forced himself to move. He walked down the steps, his footsteps echoing in the empty street. Every step felt heavier than the last. He didn't look back again, because he knew if he did, he might not have the strength to leave. When he reached his car, sat for a moment, his hands gripping the steering wheel. His chest felt tight, his mind full of everything she had said and everything he had admitted. He knew this night would stay with him, a memory too sharp to fade. Inside the house, Claire closed the door slowly. She leaned against it, her eyes closing as a tear slid down her cheek. But she wasn't broken. She felt lighter in some way, as though carrying the question for years had been the real burden. And finally hearing the answer no, matter how complicated, had set her free, Ethan drove away with the streetlights flashing across his windshield. But his thoughts remained back at that doorway. He knew he had done the right thing by being honest. Still, the image of Claire's eyes, the sound of her voice asking that question, would follow him. It was not the kind of memory that disappeared. It was the kind that carved itself into a person as the night stretched on. Both of them lay awake in different places, Ethan in his small apartment in the city, Claire in her quiet room in the family house. They thought of what had been said, of the honesty that had changed everything between them. They knew they couldn't undo it, and they also knew they wouldn't want to. Some truths, once spoken, become part of who you are. For Ethan, it was the lesson that sometimes doing the right thing still hurt, and that caring for someone didn't always mean being with them. For Claire, it was the strength of finally being seen, even if it wasn't in the way she had once hoped. They would go on with their lives, he with his career, she with her studies, but the memory of that evening would always stay tucked quietly in their hearts. It was not a story of promises or of happy endings, but of courage, honesty, and the kind of moment that changes people forever. Asterisk,